Welcome back, everyone, to another episode of The Real Podcasters, the show where, as ever, we're talking about all things movies, TV shows, video games, and a bunch of other things in no particular order. My name is Regan, as ever, and I'm joined once again, virtually, and with a lot of pixels, because that's just how the internet works. It's Dan.
Hello. Evening.
Hello.
Evening, Mara.
Alright. Jesus. You gotta love how, like, these episodes go out on a morning, and you just always open it with, like, evening.
Morning. Afternoon.
That must be so
G'day.
disconcerting. I just want to give a quick shout out to my good friend Nathan from work. When I was at work on Thursday, last Thursday, as of when this episode goes out, I was waiting to go to work, and he rocked up with his headphones and everything, and he was like, "I've just heard you on the way up the stairs," and I was like, "Right, okay." And he turns his phone and he's listening to the Chernobyl episode that we did.
Yes.
I was like, "Oh, that's really
We actually
cute."
have a listener.
And also, yeah, and then shout out to Sam as well, who I also work with, who is, I believe, our 9th follower on Spotify.
Yay.
Many people. Yay. Can we have some more, please?
Please.
You know, I mean, like I said, please.
And it's free.
And it's, it's very, very free. So last week we did talk about Chernobyl.
We did.
This week we're talking about The Last of Us. As ever, if this is the sort of thing you enjoy, we're available on Spotify, Google Podcasts, Audible, Amazon Music, Podbean, Pocket Cast, and Castbox. YouTube to be determined at some point in the future.
Depending on whether Regan's internet will allow uploads.
I'm now at whatever stage it is, where I'm just like, can I just have
Like, I'm
someone
imagining,
else,
like, the
please?
last episode that was on YouTube, like, it's just still stuck in, like, the limbo of being uploaded.
Well, it was Ant-Man and the Wasp, I think, was the last one.
Yeah.
Or Halo. I forget which one we did.
I'm pretty sure it was Ant-Man, because I don't remember seeing a Halo one on there. So, like, the Halo episode is just stuck in limbo of being uploaded.
One of those, I wouldn't be shocked. I'm sure the Ant-Man one was stuck at 24%, like, between the night and then the morning. And at that point, I was like, oh, just screw it. I'll just go to Spotify instead. Which really helped, so it was actually better. So you can follow us all on those. We've also got some social media platforms. Instagram is like the main one, and we've both got a Letterboxd account if you want a personal one for mine. So, like, for example, if you want a review of Fast and Furious 10, you can check that out if one is interested. There's not going to be an episode of that for the podcast, like, how we're. We've also got one, well, I haven't got one, but Dan's got one for Graveyard Chit Chat, our other podcast that we do, where I think it's just horror films. I'm not entirely sure yet. I mean, I know I've done, was it 16, 17 episodes?
For the majority of it is horror film, but there's, like, some other stuff on there. I mean, it could technically class it as horror, but it doesn't really fall in the category. But there's some stuff. But yeah, mine is all just, like, horror film, because that's pretty much all I just watch, to be honest. It's the rare occasion where I'll watch something different. And it's only in that occasion when I'm being asked to watch something, really.
Yeah, I'm always conscious of not throwing a load of new things onto you. Just like, Dan, just watch all these so we can cover them for the next 4 or 5 months.
Change your plans. You're going to watch the entirety of the Fast and Furious films.
Mate, I'm not even going to subject myself to that.
No, I don't think
so
I
we're
would
not
be
gonna be doing
subjected
that.
to...
Family.
It's not necessarily family, it's just boredom, really.
Just like a random bit of trivia before we actually delve into the Last of Us. I think Vin Diesel said the family is said on average once every 2.5 minutes in Fast and Furious 10. I'm like, is that it? Seriously? I could have sworn it was a lot more.
I mean, now we just need some genius editor to just compile, like, the amount of times he says family into, like, a theme tune of some kind. So, like, the Jurassic Park one, it's family, 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 family,
family.
Yeah.
I mean, I can't say it's going to be a fun one, but yeah. Anyway, so as I said last week, we spoke about the family-friendly series Chernobyl, done by one Craig Mazin. So for those who don't like Craig Mazin as a writer, you might as well turn off from this episode entirely, because we're just going to be heaping praise on him again, or at least I am. I don't know about Dan. He's still been very, very coy about it. Been about as coy as a fish. Get that reference if you do. So this week we are talking about the first season of The Last of Us, which ended, I think, last month. It feels like it's a very long time ago when it finished.
Yeah, vaguely, I think.
It was just funny how we did initially plan on covering this, I think, a week after it finished, but then Dan was like, yeah,
You need to give me time.
I need to give you a lot of time.
It was like,
So I was like,
here's
oh,
a series, here's another series.
And here's a film as well, and you're like, Regan.
Well, you should be
Sacrifice
proud of the
one of
fact,
them.
or at least get some achievement out of the fact that I watched The Last of Us in less than, 24 hours.
Well, that was just going to be standard, because I watched it week by week, I think. Or at least after 3 episodes, I think. I think eventually I started after 3 episodes.
And then watched a film with a lot of spider people in it. Straight after.
Spoilers, that's next week.
That is next week.
But yes. But yes, talking about The Last of Us, this was, as I say, created by Craig Mazin and based on the critically acclaimed video game of the same name, released back in 2013 on the good old-fashioned PlayStation, so I never played it, annoyingly. So 20 years after a fungal outbreak decimates most of the world's population, you have Joel, played by Pedro Pascal, who's tasked with delivering a young girl named Ellie, played by Bella Ramsey, to a quarantine zone in Boston. But naturally, there's infected everywhere. Ellie might hold the key to reversing the infection, but the creatures aren't the only monsters they actually have to contend with. Surprise, surprise! If I'm going to get cynical. So, as I say, I did play on a PS3, but that was over at my dad's, so I never actually played The Last of Us as a game. My sister played it religiously, though. She absolutely loved it. And in the case with the show, it was mostly just the inclusion of Craig Mazin as the writer that had me actually interested. And I thought, I could probably watch this, despite never playing the game.
Yeah.
But then that's the same for a lot of video game adaptations. I've never
It's always
played
a bit
some of them enough, so...
of a worry when you see something being adapted from a video game, because 9 times out of 10 they're pretty shit, to be honest.
Well, that's the thing, because...
It's only that ever 1% where it's actually good.
Well, I mean, it's funny with this year, because there was that Dungeons and Dragons film that came out that did really well critically, but I think I'm just going to do Story of the Day that just absolutely bombed. So the odds of them getting a sequel is actually quite bad, which is a shame, because, I mean, again, it was one I actually wanted to see.
Yeah.
But then you've got, the 2018 Tomb Raider, which I always really liked, and
Yeah.
both Sonic the Hedgehog movies. The bar is pretty low, to be honest.
Oh, yeah.
So, it's not a shock that The Last of Us as a series is as good as it is. And for a lot of people, it's probably the best video game adaptation out there. I can't really base on anything. I haven't played the game, but I am curious on Dan's thoughts, both of his history with The Last of Us and this actual show.
Well, as you say, it came out strictly as a PlayStation game, and at the time, I was an Xbox gamer, so no access to it, but I did manage to sort of watch gameplay of it, and, that was about it. I've never really sat down and played it, unfortunately. However, it's been ported to PC, and normally, for preparation for an episode, I'd straight up buy it, but I don't really fancy spending 40 quid on a game, especially in today's financial crisis.
Yeah, that's kind of mental that it's still as expensive as it is, but I think it's because it's a proper remaster and anything.
Yeah, I think so. And it seems to be a bit mixed. You get the rating of mostly overwhelmingly positive, mixed. It seems to be mixed for now, so I'm assuming there's some bugs and stuff wrong with it, but
I think so, yeah.
I'd imagine that's what it is when you port something to a entirely new platform, but I've watched gameplay of it, and I will play it at some point, but I'm just not willing to pay 40 quid straight
No,
back. Once upon a
not.
time, when the world wasn't so pricey, I'd just go, I'll just don't even need to check my bank account. But now I'm can't really afford to do that, not for a while.
Yeah.
But yeah, I've watched gameplay of it, and I've always really, really wanted to play it. So maybe that day will come soon.
Hopefully.
Now, I'm assuming we're talking about the adaptation now.
Yeah, we'll just do general before we delve into it properly.
Right. So when it comes to video
I'm
games,
less really terrified this week, just because it's I'm not. I mean, look, I really love the show, but not to the extent of Chernobyl, where it's if you dislike The Last of Us, fine, whatever. but Chernobyl, like,
Yeah, I mean, as you mentioned, as I mentioned, that most video game adaptations are just absolute pap, to be honest.
very, very mid.
Yeah. Like, there's only a very few that I can think of that I actually like. I mean, the Tomb Raider one I didn't mind. I quite like that one.
Mm-hmm.
And then you get to The Last of Us.
Which is garbage.
I really liked it, actually.
Of course you did. Well done.
I pretty much just binged it because I just thought, oh, why the hell not? It's got me. Like, it kind of shows what series it is. If I'm willing to just watch, like, the first episode, I'm like, yeah, screw it, I'm just going to watch the entire thing in, like, less than 24 hours.
That's mental.
Yeah, you're telling me. It's just kind of like... it just kind of got to the part where, like, it's going... When you obviously watch something that goes on the credits, it's like, next episode, playing. And so when you get to, like, the final episode, I'm like, have I really just sat and watched this entire thing? Yeah, Dan, you did. you did. Mm-hmm. But yeah, I really, really liked it. Like, really liked it.
Really?
Yeah.
No, I mean, like, I'm very much in the same opinion. I mean, I could call it the best video game adaptation out there, but again, I've never played the game, so...
I probably
don't know how
was
much weight that holds.
if I actually played The Last of Us, but I haven't, so I'm kind of just like, oh, I really liked it, even though I've never, ever played the game. But it sticks true to the source of it. I mean, again, I haven't played the game, I've just watched gameplay of it, and, it sticks close to the source material. At least it's not like, look at, like, I Am Legend, you're not making huge changes in the film compared to the novel, whereas this kind of just feels as if it's like a, well, game, film, whatever you want to call it, adaptation.
Yeah, I mean, I've seen enough gameplay to sort of get, like, the vibe of it, and it is pretty faithful. I mean, any changes that it does, it's done purely to expand it, so...
Oh, yeah.
So it says a lot when you can have an entire episode, in this case episode 3, we'll talk a bit about that later, where 90% of it is just side characters for the entire episode, and it doesn't feel like filler. It just feels like it's just a natural extension of the rest of the world. That's really good going, to be honest. I just love how you can take a breather for an episode and just focus on someone new whose lives aren't
I do appreciate
really...
that. Like, at least it's not like Joel and Ellie for like the entirety of the series. Like, you do have, again, that like exploratory option of other characters, and they're not just like totally irrelevant. They actually fit into these core characters as well.
Yeah, I mean, it says a lot, really. Because I know there were some comments that people were a bit miffed with the fact that there wasn't as much time spent with Joel and Ellie as like the game, but that's a silly criticism, because I'm like, you've got 30 to 40 hours versus 9 episodes.
Yeah,
like, that's not right at all. And it's also different because it's not as interactive as the game either.
But
so
it's
you're just
not going to
having to
be
watch
like,
the
at the end of the day, this is
exactly
like a live action blooming thing. It's not a video game, and people seem to just forget that and then go out with petty
well, if you talk a little
criticism.
bit about... Yeah, I mean, I'll not delve into the criticism too much, because I think I've only kept up to with like a couple of them. I think there'll be more criticism for whenever they do an adaptation of Last of Us Part 2. I'll get to that later. I actually know more about Part 2 than Part 1 in terms of the game, which is fascinating. But yeah, it's absolutely a fantastic show. I just didn't start watching it until I think after episode 3 dropped, maybe episode 4.
Mm-hmm.
And then I thought, okay, fine, I'll watch it. And yeah, I was a mess, to be honest. In a way I wasn't expecting, because let's face it, we've got zombies. I'm biased because I don't like zombies.
Yeah, and I was kind of like thinking like, this is basically zombies, but I'll talk a bit about that stuff later. Being the horror nerd and everything, but. You've not been huge on zombies to begin with anyway. I mean, again, going back to like the I Am Legend film, you seem to tolerate that even though it's zombies in it.
That one I didn't mind. I mean, I don't love I Am Legend by any means, but I'm very particular when it comes to zombies. And realistically, this isn't like The Walking Dead with zombies. This is...
Or Night of the Living Dead, which you absolutely detest, and not just... It's fine. It's okay. We all have our takes.
very much of its time. In more ways than one. But
I'm trying to think like other what zombie stuff you've seen as well. I know for sure I Am Legend, and obviously The Last of Us.
Shaun of the Dead I really like.
Yeah.
Maggie I really liked with Arnold Schwarzenegger. That was back in 2015. That one no one knows about. It's probably my favourite, to be honest, because it delves into the psyche a hell of a lot more. But we're not talking about Maggie, we're talking about The Last of Us.
Yes.
But we'll definitely get to The Infected a little bit later, because let's face it, it's not really like a zombie show by any means of the imagination. We'll talk about Joel and Ellie first, because they are the heart and soul of this series. Because that's what keeps the show going, much like the game, is the relationship that grows between Joel and Ellie.
Yeah.
You could make the joke that this is Pascal keeping another child safe in a dangerous environment, as we already made the joke earlier.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think the comparisons were always going to be there. This is decidedly darker, only a little bit though. I mean, Ellie isn't green with little ears and constantly making just like baby noises instead of actually talking.
No,
it's definitely not that. No. But what I really like with them two is the fact that neither of them really want to be in the position that they are. Like,
not at all.
Joel has got no interest in being anywhere near Ellie, and Ellie is just like, I'd rather just be on my own, frankly.
Yeah, which as you learn as you get through the series anyway.
Oh, yeah.
Like, oh, yeah.
I mean, hell, even with Joel, you can get the sense that he's initially seeing Ellie as like the replacement for his daughter that he doesn't actually want. Like, he doesn't want to be reminded of that, and yet here we are with a young girl, much like with his daughter 20 years prior.
Because it's like the classic thing of that, I can't lose another person again.
Yeah, so I mean, like, his heart's in the right place with that. It's just funny how it evolves, like, especially through like the dad jokes.
Oh,
that, like,
yeah. The
Ellie
puns
keeps on
and
popping
stuff,
up with him,
yeah.
like, this is brilliant. And just like the little moments where he starts to like sort of like smirk a little bit. It's like, I shouldn't laugh.
Yeah.
I don't want to laugh, but I really want to laugh. And it's really great. It really is. It shows that like relationship really.
It's a brilliantly
really
crafted
growing.
arc. I have to give it to that. Like over the whole entire series, they're very at ends in the beginning. Like neither of them, as you say, want to be in the position that they're in. But over time, they kind of just start to connect a little bit better. And it's, as you say, through like the terrible dad jokes that relationship starts to form, and it's great. Like I love stuff like that because it's imagine like if it was just like they were just always at that like basic sort of level of characterization for 9 episodes. I think I would be bored out of my skull because I'm like, you've gone through absolute hell and you still don't like each other.
One thing I do like as well is the fact, especially with Joel as a character, the series never really paints him in like a really positive light.
No.
Like, he's by no means a saint, and the show definitely doesn't paint him as one. Like, I mean, like a lot of the characters in this world, they've had to make some really awful choices towards those around them.
Yeah.
So you're always questioning people's morality and where they stand. I'll talk more about that in a bit, but you definitely get the sense that this post-apocalyptic world is really starting to blur the line between the survivors and the infected, which isn't the most original thing. We've seen that a lot more recently in like film and TV when it's to do with post-apocalyptic stuff, and there's some sort of monstery thing out there, and it's like, it isn't the monster we should be worried about.
Yeah, it's not just the monster type deal. It's people who are the real monsters. Rawr.
Exactly like that. They literally just say "row" the entire time. There's no like clicking or anything. It's just "row, row." Ellie as a character as well, initially, because it's such a young actress as well, initially comes across as unlikable and quite annoying. But credit to
it's never
Bella
in a
Ramsey,
sense where I absolutely detest the character though.
No, but I think that's also a credit to Bella Ramsey as an actress, because they're absolutely brilliant.
Oh yeah,
in the show, and honestly, they're probably the highlight as well.
Yeah,
I mean, like, I love Pedro Pascal as Joel, but Bella Ramsey just like commands the screen anytime she's on, and she's
especially
only like,
after
I don't even know how old, like 15 or 16 or something, I think.
Something like that, yeah. Especially after episode 7, you're like, oh man, things just came to light.
Episode 7 is Episode 7's a tough one, as is a lot of them. We will get to that.
I mean, even the first episode, I think, is pretty hard hitting. Like, for a debut episode.
Oh, definitely.
I mean, like,
Yeah, I
Joel
knew
literally
that one
loses his
was-
daughter, like, just as they think they found rescue, and you know.
Yeah, I'd seen that bit in the game, so I was waiting for that to happen. It is pretty much identical to the game, but it's still as hard hitting as the game was. Like, that one was traumatizing. This one is exactly the same.
Yeah.
But in the case with Ellie, I had read enough internet discourse for some truly awful people, frankly. Like, with the stupid comments about how this isn't my Ellie. I'm like, she's not yours. Like, she never has been. Like, once again, it's an adaptation. It's not going to be 100% faithful. Like, if you want it to be 100% faithful, here's an idea. Just play the game. Like, it's there. The show doesn't stop you from doing that.
Well, you see, snobby, petty people like that will never ever understand that. I think they've got some cordyceps growing in their brain, maybe just stopping them thinking properly, you know?
Oh, that's just bloody cordyceps.
Cordyceps.
Cordyceps. But yeah, back to Ellie. I mean, she definitely starts off as quite rude and brash, but as the episodes go on, as she spends more time learning about the world around her with Joel, as I say, she becomes the highlight of the show. And as I say, Ramsey's absolutely fantastic, and I'm not going to state that enough. Like, I'll just keep on reiterating
fantastic.
that.
Absolutely. Like, even I mean, the performance she gives throughout. I mean, as you say, she starts off quite a like bratty, unpleasant character who's just rather quite annoying,
very bratty,
but never at the point where I'm like absolutely detesting the character. That's just clearly how this character is going to develop over time. And then when she develops further over the series, which I'm sure we'll speak about in certain episodes. 7.
Oh.
It's brilliant. I mean, like, it's tough to say who I think is the highlight, because again, I haven't like played the game at all, so I don't really, if we're going to be very like faithful to it for those very faithful people, I'd probably say Joel for like faithfulness wise, but for the adaptation, Ellie, without a doubt.
Yeah, definitely.
She feels like the most developed character over that series. I mean, Joel's a very important character as well, but Ellie, I think, the highlight for sure. Yeah,
she's absolutely the heart of the show for sure. And she's also a plot device that actually works.
Yes,
it's actually three-dimensional as well.
Yeah, she's not just like right. You've got a cure. We're not going to develop you. We need to just ship you off somewhere thin.
One other thing that is actually quite faithful to the game, especially visually, is the infected. Not zombies, but they are zombies. But we're in 2023, both in the show and in reality, so we can't call them zombies. We have to call them something else because whatever.
Did you seriously just go Gen Z for this?
Gen zombie. Oh dear, I didn't actually go there. So as I said, this is technically a zombie show. My least favourite of the big three, which I think I referred to the big three in our Dog Soldiers episode of Graveyard Chit Chat, where it's like vampires, werewolves, and zombies as like the big three when it comes to like film and TV and stuff.
I'd probably say zombies is the king of that, but then again, I've pretty much watched like nearly every zombie film under the sun, really.
Yeah, I'm the exact opposite.
You've just watched.
I mean, granted, I think like what's weird because of the three, they're the ones that probably had like the most like inclusions in visual medium, to say the least.
Yeah,
but like probably still the weakest. But again, I'm like really nitpicky for that sort of thing.
Indeed.
So credit. Ouch. But credit to The Last of Us. The infected here are quite unique in terms of the design and the threat level.
I wouldn't even say quite. I'd say excessively unique.
Yeah, I mean, I've not really seen anything quite like it, to be honest. It's very it's very plant-like, which I suppose makes sense. But it is like a really interesting design, and I know that it is incredibly faithful to the game, like from like the clips I've seen. In particular, one sequence in episode 2, which, to be honest, feels more like an echo of the kitchen scene in Jurassic Park, where they're also hiding under like covers and stuff, and there's just one of them just sort of like clicking around, but in all honesty, while there's certainly some great moments with the infected, as I say, they're never the core focus of the show.
No, they're there to basically emphasize, this is The Last of Us.
Oh, is that what it is? Oh Christ! I honestly thought it was like another adaptation of I Am Legend. I was waiting for Will Smith to rock up with Doggo.
No, I really, really like the design of this, and take it from somebody who's watched like pretty much all the zombie films under the sun. You've got like the Romero zombie era. You've got like in his eyes the zombies are just people, but there's a bit of a politicalness to it, like they're just zombies in the modern like era. We shop, we do this, we do that, we do the other. We're zombies in a way, because all we do is work, go to work, sleep, eat, repeat. That's all we do, which is what these do. And then you get like 28 days later, the introduction of fast zombies. But then the debate came whether they were classed as zombies or not, because everybody knew zombies as the slow moving corpses that were rotting away, whereas these are like fast and feral, And then you get something like The Infected in here, where it's taken from real life mushroom, cordyceps, which affects the animal kingdom, insects in particular, because the mushroom essentially just takes over their body like a zombie, and it makes them like climb trees and spread around as infection does. So when you have like the mythology of humans ingesting it or getting into contact with them, it turns them into fungus spreading monsters. It's unique as hell, but it's hard to say whether they're undead or not, because I'm not sure. Like, I mean, if they die and then they resurrect, I mean, you certainly see parts of it in the series, but I suppose it's just kind of up for debate, much like with 28 Days Later. Are they actually like undead zombies, or are they infected?
Well, exactly, because they are just referred to as the infected. They're not really called like the dead. I mean, when you could have like episodes like with the end of like episode 5 with the little kid Sam, it's quite clear that he's still alive. It's just like he's not really functioning anymore. It's not really him. So there is definitely like an argument for whether or not they are actually dead. I probably would have said no. They're just sort of teetering on the edge.
Yeah.
But it is like it's quite an interesting debate, to say the least, because as I say, there's been so many different ways to do a zombie thing at this point. It's really difficult to do something original. And now you could say, well, this isn't original, it's based on the game. I'm like, right, well, is the game original? And you're like, yeah. It's like, so there we go then.
I don't know any other like zombie thing, infected thing, where you utilize like a zombie fungus, more or less. Like, I don't know any other film that does that. I mean, I've seen like Romero zombies, I've seen Nazi zombies, I've seen fast zombies.
You've seen way too many of the Nazi zombies, I swear to God.
I've only watched three films. That is Dead Snow 1 and 2, and the weird one with the magic tar.
The magic Overlord.
Yeah, that's it.
I thought that was naff.
Well, yeah, what did you expect?
Well, yeah, it was. Fun, to be honest. Magic tar
that's able to resurrect the dead. What did you freaking expect?
Good quality content.
No.
Bloody J.J. Abrams.
But no, finishing off with that, like
Cloverfield.
When you watch like Dawn of the Dead and you see like the zombies are almost a mimic of an actual human being, because we just are zombies realistically. Waiting for death, more or less.
Ooh, political. Ooh.
Well, we are, though, because it's consumerism. We consume.
I'm picturing that more as like a comedy, especially if they're just acting like people. So I'm picturing like, okay, so zombies going shopping. That feels like a comedy. It's like, are you wanting the 3 for 2 deal on that? Is it card or cash? Card.
Your card's been declined.
So have you.
Jesus. And then, 28 days later with the introduction of fast zombies, arguably infected. And then you get to The Last of Us,
never
which
watched
is
that
just...
yet. It's annoying. I wouldn't care because it was on Disney Plus, but I think it's just the sequel that's on there now. I don't know what, because I had it on my watch list. Again, bearing in mind it's zombies, so I'm like, I'll get to it eventually. You can spoil it, I don't mind. I'm assuming there's zombies in it. Oh, shut up, Dan.
Move on.
Stop being as dramatic as I was with last week's episode.
Absolute clicker.
But yeah, I mean, still keeping in like line with the infected. I mean, in reality, the show follows a trend that, as I said, like that we've seen lately when it comes to the post-apocalyptic stuff, both on TV and on film. Is that the monster we should be fearing isn't the actual monster, but it's the people. Again, it's not the most original direction to go in, but I think with The Last of Us,
it's very hard to, I think, because again, like, this is something that's happened since, like, you know, whenever the first zombie film came out, you know, like, the humans are the monsters, technically. I mean, the zombies are there just to kind of get things going along. I mean, yeah, they're the threat, but the humans are the bigger threat because, you know, you're in a you're in an apocalyptic surrounding. You know, you're not going to be like your nitty-gritty self anymore. You've got to adapt to live, which is like The Last of Us.
Exactly.
You're in this, like, absolute post-apocalyptic land. I mean, I absolutely love the exterior shot of when they basically look out and there's just this city that's just been taken over by nature. It looks absolutely amazing.
Very Chernobyl-esque, or very very much like Pripyat.
Yes.
Yeah, Pripyat. But yeah, The Last of Us very much embodies this, like, you know, it's featuring characters that technically we're rooting for, but it very rarely condones their actions in actually getting to what they need. As I said with Joel, in particular, early on it's presented as incredibly twisted since losing his daughter, because, you know, we fast forward 20 years to 2023. They didn't even get the Star Wars sequels, Dan. They never got that. They didn't even get the end of the prequels. They never knew.
It's probably a good thing.
The last memory of Star Wars was sand. How sad is that? No wonder the world has gone.
No wonder the world went to hell.
It wasn't just the fungus. That was a little bit of a tangent there. But he is very much happy to kill other people when it's deemed necessary, even if other characters at no point
does it ever feel easy for the character Joe. Like, every step is a challenge, whether it's like one hurdle or like a gazillion hurdles. There's always hurdles for this character to jump through, which is good.
I mean, like, he spent 20 years in this outbreak, so he can tell what the real threat is when other people can't. In particular, with like some of the closing moments in episode 9, which it's quite difficult to watch, to be honest, because it's like, on the one hand, pretty badass when he's just clearing out the hospital, but at the same time, it's like you're just killing people they haven't done anything to him.
Yeah.
Like, so it's a bit of a difficult one, especially with the actual ending, which we'll get to. But I think the character that embodies the worst of the humans is definitely David. Played by Scott Shepherd, who's introduced in the penultimate episode, which is fascinating. He's introduced in the penultimate one and is the villain for that entire episode, and you could argue he's like the best villain in the entire show. One episode. That's how good it is. Yeah. Which also features one Troy Baker as well, who obviously played Joel in the game. I do appreciate the fact that he is in the show, but he's not like
the main character, because, like, you know, the go-to thing would be like the guy who voices him is the guy who's going to play him in the live action. It's not, which is really good, to be honest.
Yeah. But in the case with David, he's a preacher who claims to be at peace with God. He's got a community and everything. Only then to reveal how scummy and disgusting he is, going so far as to kill those who annoy him and don't listen to him, and then make the rest of the community eat them without actually realizing what they're doing. And I'm sat there thinking, you're just awful. Like it's so satisfying when Ellie's the one that kills him. Like, that was It was like a weight had been lifted.
You know
like,
what it is?
God, we don't have to
During
deal
that
with him for another
entire
episode.
fight scene, I thought Joel at any minute is just gonna storm in and just blow his brains out. Like, I'm just waiting for it, because it builds up to that. You think, yeah, he's gonna do it, he's gonna save the day, but it's not. It's Ellie who basically takes it upon herself to stab him a lot.
It isn't even a stab, it's just cleaving.
He's just
I'll
like
get
a
rid of this
human
limb, this one, this one, this one.
pinata, to be honest.
I was thinking of just sort of like blindfolded, it's like, right, just like go over him, like, okay, it's just, oh, sweet.
But yeah, I do really appreciate the fact that you get like an interesting villain. It's not just like some generic marauder. It's like, oh, I'm doing this because I want to be like the penultimate survivor. It's not like, it's kind of, especially like, you know, you introduce them first and you're like, oh, I don't really see anything too wrong with you, and then all is revealed. It's like, oh, you are a sick git.
Yeah, there is a lot of them. I mean, as I say, it does that thing where you could introduce a character who's actually quite likable, only to reveal that no, actually, they're doing some pretty awful stuff.
But again, this is like the apocalypse. It changes people for the worst.
Well, exactly. We're not going to go like in depth with every single episode. You know, we've already like skated around like the stuff that we like, but in terms of like some notable moments, I've definitely got a few. I wouldn't be shocked if we've got pretty similar ones, to be honest.
Just get thinking that.
Yeah. So in terms of episode 1, really the entire like opening flashback, where we get that development for Joel and his daughter and the way the world was before everything went to hell. And even just that entire sequence of them trying to escape is absolutely brilliant. Like, captivating as hell.
Yeah, I'd definitely say that. I'd actually go with the first encounter with the infected, with Ellie as well, when she goes to check on the neighbour, and there is like one of the neighbours on the floor covered in blood, and he's basically like, just run. And then you see like the infected for the first time, and then Joel and his brother rock up, and Ellie just jumps straight in, and then you see like all the infected running out.
Sarah, not Ellie, Sarah. Yeah, sorry. Sarah. I was like, is Ellie in this now?
Yeah.
That's really annoying. Is she actually a lot older than like we actually realised? Is she in like her 30s?
When Sarah,
damn it, she's tiny.
correction, when Sarah encounters the infected and basically has no idea what's going on, essentially, and she's so scared and terrified, and like her dad really doesn't know what to do in the situation, so he just goes all out Mad Max and basically just just drives off, leaving behind their own possessions, everything.
Yeah, it reminded me of the opening for A Quiet Place 2, which opens up on day 1 of the actual events in that, and it's pretty identical because that is complete chaos.
Oh yeah,
there's no like through line or anything, and it's very much the same with The Last of Us, because it would be just completely all over the place. Like, no one knows what the hell to do. Some of them like, oh, I'll just give him a cuddle.
It's just the chaos unfolds relentlessly. It starts off with one little thing and it just explodes into a million other things. It's definitely the escape as well. I think that's probably my second highlight of episode 1.
I mean, in regards with episode 2, as I say, with like the kitchen scene, well, it's not actually the kitchen, but it's the kitchen-esque scene with like the clicker. That one, just, I was like properly, like really tense with that one. And again, it's zombies. I'm like, oh my god, I'm actually kind of invested in this. That's kind of batty. Thanks, Craig.
I think it makes it better, the fact that like they can't. Well, again, it's like a quiet place. Like you've got the monster that relies on like sound to hunt, and the clickers do the same. Like, it involves sound. So when you're in that moment of just like you can't even breathe normally in case this monstrous thing hears you, and all it's doing is going, just doing its stupid little possessed walk around the place. Like,
I'm loving the sound effect stuff you're kind of doing again. Faison, you did that a couple of weeks ago with something as well. I can't actually remember what it was.
It's funny because actually watching the I mean, you've probably seen it as well, but obviously there was a big fuss over the series, so I looked at like the clicker sound effects, and they basically have like voice actors just in front of the mic just making like weird sounds, and then it's all like edited together. So it's like you got like people going,
yeah.
terrifying.
Looking more and more like a squirrel, as it turns out. Imagine if it was squirrels instead.
Well, it's just Scrat from Ice Age.
Oh my god, yes. Oh, genius. We now have Ice Age 6.
The last of the acorn.
Of course. The last of the acorns.
But no, I think the clickers are horrifying.
Yeah.
Really ups the scare factor. And again, it's not like central focus on them, but when they come in, you know it's going to be a good episode.
It would be hard to pick a highlight for episode 3, because it's just all of it, to be honest. Like, that's, to me, that's still in the running for the best episode of the season. Again, it's focusing on other characters, and honestly, I was just an emotional wreck at the end. Like, I did not, like it's weird, because I'd heard bits and bobs about this episode, because I hadn't watched the series yet.
Yeah.
I didn't have Now TV, because I gave up after Justice League, and I was like, I'm not going to bother with that, and I've still got it now. So I think I started watching, I think after episode 3 or 4 came out. I think it was episode 3. And I was like, fine, I'll give it a watch. Because I'd heard it was quite heart-wrenching, like an episode. That doesn't even cover it.
No.
Bloody Bill and Frank.
No, I tell you what it is, like when it starts, I was a bit like, right, what's going on here? And then, you know, I sat through the episode, I'm like, oh, Jesus Christ. Like, oh my God. Absolutely heart-wrenching, man.
Because I know that this is pretty original compared to the game, because I know Bill's in the game, and he alludes to Frank, but there's nothing else for that. It could just be a mate or anything. So it's new for this series where it's a relationship. And we see that relationship like develop over like weeks and months and stuff to the actual ending.
Yeah.
And again, I wasn't expecting to be as emotionally wrapped up as I was. Though the one thing I know compared to the game is that the last shot with the window, I believe, is actually the background for the title screen for the first game, I think.
All right.
So I thought that's a nice inclusion, to be honest, because again, there's like little bits that definitely straight from the game,
and pieces that tie into the game. Yeah.
But this is how you do it with an adaptation, where it's not just like, oh, let's just do exactly the game. Let's expand a bit.
I think if I'm going to be very nitpicky with finding a highlight in episode 3, because, you know, I could just blatantly say the entire episode, happily say the entire episode, but I think for me it's the sadness of that Frank is terminally ill and Bill doesn't want to be in this apocalypse on his own, so he chooses to actually, you know, take his own life with Frank so they can be together even in death. And again, it's so tragic because it's the apocalypse. Like, why on earth would you want to live in this world on your own?
You gotta love how you're just talking about it. I'm actually starting to well up just a little bit, and I'm not even watching the damn show.
Don't think about that, Regan. Don't you think about the note.
I'm cutting out the squeaker. I still really like episode 4, but I can't really pick like a major highlight with that one. Episode 5, though, I think everything with the ending, with like the death of Catherine, who's briefly introduced as like a potential villain who's trying to track down Joel and Ellie, the absolute horde of infectors.
Yeah,
there's a few of them. It's like 5 or 6 ish.
I think for 4, it's hard to pick. In truthfulness, not because it's a bad episode or anything like that. It's just very difficult to pick. In truthfulness, but with 5, definitely the ending with the horde of infected and the bloated infected and just the absolute
bloated, that's what you call
massacre of baddies.
Yeah,
it's bloody. But
also the actual ending with the characters of Henry and Sam, who introduced in episode 4.
Yep.
I wasn't. Again, I didn't expect to be as wrapped up as I was. Because you kind of knew that Sam was going to be infected. We knew he was going to change. It's just, you didn't expect it to be Henry that kills him. But then he also does like a whole Bill and Frank scenario where it's like, I
don't know what to do. I can't live
like this. And then takes his own life. And at that point, I was just numb.
Yeah.
It's just...
I think it's like the
one
ending
could say it's
of that bit when they make the graves, they bury them, and then she brings out like
Jesus.
the sketch pad things, and she says sorry on it with like a sad face. I was like, hold it together.
And you watched it in 24 hours, you nutter.
I did, yeah. I was like, I wonder what
Yeah.
episode is going to bring the emotions next. Find out.
Well, in this case, it's episode 7,
Jesus.
which is based on DLC from the original game. And hell, it's got the same name. It's referred to as Left Behind. And again, everything with Ellie and Riley, absolutely. Again, I hate it how much I cared, because again, it's just one of those things. I'm like, zombies, blah blah blah, whatever. Oh, bugger! I actually care now.
Yeah.
Damn it.
I think it starts off a little slow, but then like it's rewarding you for being patient.
Yeah,
like,
because I think as
absolutely.
well, because what's alluded to, I think earlier on in the season, is the idea that when we do see Ellie kill, technically, it's not the first time she's done it, but she'll not explain as to what it is.
Yeah.
And it's still never officially confirmed, even in this episode, but it's very much evident that the first person she actually kills
Was Riley.
is Riley.
Yeah.
And you just sat there thinking, in another scenario, it would have just been like Bill and Frank again. We would have had that
Because I think
concurrently,
even
and I feel
Riley
like,
says, like, we can just wait it out and see what happens, or we can just choose the easy way to go together.
and we never know how much time passes between that and
Nah.
her being killed. And it's horrible.
I think it makes it
It's
even worse
horrible.
the fact that, they're best friends, potentially lovers, and, it comes to this where I think Riley notices, like, the bite, and then Ellie notices the bite on her, and it just all falls into place from then. Like, it's like, oh, God.
Yeah. Episode 8 as well, as we alluded to before, when it comes to David, that ending with Ellie killing David. But you know what it is? Like, despite welling up with Frank and Bill, with welling up from Henry and Sam, same with Ellie and Riley, the bit that actually made me properly like break was the very last bit, because throughout most of the episode, Joel's been incapacitated.
Oh,
Ellie's
I
been
know
left on her
exactly
own.
what you're on about as well.
And they finally get back together, and as soon as Joel calls her baby girl, I just properly burst. I was like, oh my god.
Yeah. Do you know what
Damn
is,
it,
though?
Pedro.
Again, with this being the apocalypse and stuff like that, like, a girl at her age should not have to be subjected to the horror of the apocalypse like this.
Oh, exactly. I mean,
she's
she's
had to
absolutely
kill
covered in blood. It's
her best friend. She's had to escape an absolute madman, butcher half of them to death, and she just runs out absolutely manic, because you're going to be after that. She's absolutely drenched in blood. It's honestly like a scene from Carrie.
I was going to say, I was getting like a Carrie vibe from this.
And she just runs out manic, and Joel grabs her, but she's so, like, anxious, she thinks it's another
Numb.
person, so she starts flaying around, and then he says, it's alright, it's me, baby girl, and I was just like, oh god, not again.
Oh, gotta love it. Here's the thing, I always watch this on my tablet before like going to bed on like the night that like they went out.
Yeah.
And there's just like my girlfriend asleep next to us, and there's just me just like crying. Just like, if she wakes up and sees me like this, I don't know what the hell's gonna happen.
She will never ever live it down.
It'll just be like, were you watching the Iron Giant again? I'm like, I'm always watching the Iron Giant. Superman.
Nah, I watched them all on my telly, like, just wrapped up on a night, and I was just like,
And then you were emotionally wrapped up.
yeah. Pretty much.
Yeah. Episode 9 though, that one again, it's got a lot of highlights. As I mentioned before, like Joel's massacre through the hospital trying to get Ellie back.
I think
again,
it's a kind of different highlight though, like compared to every other highlight I've mentioned. I've kind of seen it coming, whereas this, I did not see it coming at all.
No, because again, I mean, I knew nothing about the ending for the first game. I knew about the ending to the second.
Yeah.
I did not know the ending for the first one. I was going in completely blind, and for the most part, I think it is pretty similar to to the game to a certain extent. Although one thing I did like, actually, I'll briefly mention the opening to this episode where we see the reason as to why Ellie's immune, and it's because of her mother, played by the actress who plays Ellie in the game. So again, a nice inclusion.
Yeah.
If really freaky that Ellie gives birth to Ellie.
Yeah, it's like men all over again.
I was going to think of something else, and yeah, okay, fair enough, that makes sense.
Yeah.
Well, it doesn't make sense. But,
Yeah, I think that's the whole point of men, to be honest. It's just to not make sense. But
M's.
yeah, I do like the inclusion of that. Like, is even if it's just like for a little bit, it is a nice little touch.
Well, yeah, because I don't think it's ever explained in the game, so it's another inclusion done for the show.
Yeah.
Which again, you didn't necessarily need to. It's one of those inclusions
But
where
it's a good thing though that they do that,
because
because you're adding your own originality to like a take on the game. So I'm absolutely fine for people to inject other stuff into it, because it might not be like 100% necessary, but it just sort of adds to the flow of the story.
Yeah. One bit that's obviously quite contentious is the final bit with Joel lying to Ellie about what actually happened.
Yeah.
Because across this show, you know, we've seen her kind of like going back and forth as to whether Joel's actually like
a good
telling
guy
the
or
truth
not.
and
Yeah.
then and they finally reached like a good point, and then this happened, and it's still left ambiguous as to whether or not Ellie actually buys any of it. Which I really like, because it kind of alludes the idea that maybe she does actually believe him. So there's going to be some heartbreak in season 2 for sure.
It's a very tense ending.
But I like, it's a very tense ending to say the least, and one that feels a little bit unfair. It doesn't leave things on a even on like a satisfying note, because it really doesn't. What will be curious though is with season 2. So
is there any
I'm
idea when
sure
season
I've
2 is
heard-
actually coming out? Because I mean, I'm just hooked now. I just need it now, to be honest.
Well, we've got a bit of a writer's strike going on, so not anytime
yes.
soon.
Writer strikes.
That could be an episode in and of itself. It's truly awful.
Totally irrelevant, but I mean, come on. How on earth is it? There have been numerous films into why AI is a bad decision.
Yeah, there's a lot of things going wrong with this bloody writer's strike. Even one, I mean, again, just to try and keep on like a little bit of a tangent, I read recently that it's hit certain projects so bad that they're still filming. They're going to start filming Deadpool 3 fairly soon. But
yeah, I saw that the
because
other day, actually.
But like, because of the way the contract works, you're not allowed to improv. You
Yeah.
have to stick exclusively to the script. You can't do your own thing. And because Ryan Reynolds is the kind of actor that thrives on improv, I'm like, I'd probably just pause it or just get the thing bloody sorted. Because, no offense, I can remember back to 2007 to 2008 with that writer's strike. That caused an absolute nightmare for things.
Yeah.
Like, when you had, like, Daniel Craig, Bond himself, writing stuff for Quantum of Solace, and bloody shows, because it's terrible. It's such an awful position to be in, so they should be
Yeah.
bloody glad that this series came out before all that.
I know. I think if this had came out during the time that it is now, I don't think we'd ever see the light of day for years.
No.
So it is a shame that is affecting it.
Yeah. I mean, in terms of season 2, I think it's still quite a way off, but what I think is going to happen is I don't think it's going to adapt I don't think it's going to adapt part 2.
Right.
Or at least not entirely, because I know there's like a 5-year time jump between the two games, and I think, because I mean, how much of part 2 are you aware of?
Not in the slightest. I mean, I'm aware of the game. I've never ever seen a bit of gameplay from it though.
So you don't know anything story-wise?
Nothing about it.
Okay, I'll keep quiet then. But it's the kind of story where you can't just do a season 2.
Right.
And just adapt that game. There's too much, and also
So it's got to be
the
like done over
backlash.
like a couple of seasons. Do you think?
Yeah, that plus the fact that game got a severe amount of backlash. A lot of it quite unwarranted, to be honest. Again, I can't say why, because
Right.
again, if they're gonna do if they're going to adapt part 2, they're going to have to do those things, unfortunately.
Yeah.
There's the choices that game makes. But I think, as far as I know, I mean, I could be wrong. I mean, like, no one really knows yet, but I'm sure the season 2 is going to be sort of like an interlude between them. So
All right.
it's kind of going to be like a bridge between them. So that's not a bad idea. You could do your own thing. I mean, hell, even when they've done their own thing with this series, it still works remarkably well.
Yeah.
So I'd be more than happy to see just like an original story set in this universe for season 2, and then once it's earned, then do part 2.
So it kind of
in
like
season 3.
a sort of bridge between like the 5-year gap kind of thing.
Yeah, because let's be honest, I mean, this thing was only shot like in 2021, I think, or 2022. So yeah, some of the actors are probably going to age quite rapidly, especially like the younger ones. But you still want a bit more time because it is established there's a lot that's happened between the 2 games.
Yeah.
So I'd quite like to see that. To be honest, I think that'd be quite nice. But again, we don't really know. I just love the fact that I've written bits of the script here that, much like with Alien Isolation, I'm going to have to kind of remove before like I start saying it's because someone doesn't know. Which though in this case that's kind of justified, because I wouldn't expect someone who hasn't played the games to know unless you're like me and you just happen to find out before you've even watched a single clip of the first game and you're like, oh right, that's what you did with like the second game. Okay.
No, as I say, like, I have no idea.
Interesting.
No clue what happens.
Well, that's good then. Yeah. But yeah, as I say, especially with the backlash to that second game, the writers are going to have to know that they're going to be going in and like, yeah, I'm expecting things to be.
But then again, you can't please everybody.
Oh no, of course not. And I think if you try and do that, it's going to end up being quite naff. So I'm just like embrace the fact that this is the story you want to do and just do it. But then as well, one of the other writers for this show is Neil Druckmann, who created The Last of Us.
Yeah.
So of all the people to do it, I'd be more than happy with him doing it. And I think even he said if he's going to adapt part 2, yeah, I'm going to use the bits that people didn't like, because for me,
if it's a
works.
big part of it, you're gonna have to, like, you can't really just filler it in, because it's just not gonna look great.
Well, exactly. And I'm sure when season 2 rocks around, I'm sure we'll talk about it.
Oh, for
Unless
sure.
it is absolutely terrible.
I doubt
in which
it.
case I'll probably not bother.
I doubt it, because again, I will get round to playing the games, and you know, I've clearly got a while, so
yeah, I'll just watch the gameplay of the first 2 games. Although I did start with part 2, I think, not too long ago, to be honest. And that's already quite cinematic in terms of a game, so I'd be quite happy to do that. I mean, I did the same with Spider-Man PS4, and that was amazing to watch. Better, it would have been even better to play. Curse with an Xbox. Just release it on the Xbox, please. It would be quite nice. But in terms of final thoughts for Last of Us Season 1, Mr. Dan.
oof, definitely the best, like, video game adaptation there is today. I think that is safe to say. Because it's
Definitely.
it's not afraid to do its own thing, but it doesn't rely on being like totally original. Like, you know, you've got that source material, but you know, when necessary, they add in bits that might just make the story a little bit better, like the stuff with Ellie's mum. I think that's really good, actually.
Yeah.
The stuff with Riley, I know you said like with the DLC and stuff like that, but I love the way it sort of leaves you on a bit of a mystery. It's like, well, did she actually kill her or not? So I really like the fact that they've actually just added in like bits and pieces when they feel necessary. I'm never like, you know, I don't like that. I think it's really good, actually. So yeah, I think
I mean, I'm very
really
much
looking forward to whatever they do next with it, and I'll support it along the way. I love the practical effects of the infected. It's absolutely badass.
Oh yeah, definitely. It's just I just really love Craig Mazin doing this sort of stuff.
Yeah.
I think it'd be quite interesting if he went back to comedy. I think after all this, I think that'd be quite interesting. But again, he's such a damn good writer.
He's clearly found like his footing in this kind of thing then.
Oh yeah. I mean, I know there was also a companion podcast to The Last of Us as well. Though, granted, I didn't actually listen to that one. As opposed to the Chernobyl one, which I'd listened to religiously. But I didn't do it with like The Last of Us one. But yeah, I was really surprised, to be honest, with this one. I found myself really enjoying it and crying a lot. Damn it.
But it kind of shows like how good of it is if it's actually making a person feel that way.
Yeah, and I find it quite rewarding, especially when that happens to someone as cynical as me. But then, when you've got films like The Iron Giant and Into the Spider-Verse, that can make you well up in various stages. I swear to God, if you thought that was crap.
I'm not saying anything.
Yeah, well, no, you will, just next week.
Yeah, but I'm just going to keep my thoughts very, very contained for now.
Damn it. But yes, I mean, much like we talked about Chernobyl last week, obviously we both highly recommend The Last of Us, as I'm sure everyone does.
Yeah, I
again,
can't say I've seen any person saying don't watch it, because like everybody's loved it so far.
Yeah.
Obviously, you get like the petty people who are like, this isn't my alley, but like, whatever. Don't pay attention to those people.
And we're like, let's just ignore you. Let's not cancel you. We'll just ignore you, and that's better.
They're potentially infected because the cordyceps are clogging up their brain.
But yeah, that's our thoughts on The Last of Us Season 1. A month after the show finished. It's weird. It feels like it's been a hell of a lot longer, but I think that's just because of the way that these episodes have gone out the last few weeks, and that has only been like 2 episodes in like a month.
Yeah, because you gallivanted off to Norway.
Yeah, dealing with trolls. I also recommend that film on Netflix, Troll. That's like the Norwegian version of Godzilla. It's actually quite good.
The Norwegian version of Godzilla.
Honestly, if you watch it, it is basically just the Norwegian version of Godzilla.
Okay, I'm going to put that in my watch list.
Which I don't mind. I'm going to put it on the watch list. But yes, as I said, that's our thoughts on The Last of Us. Both of us very much happy with it, and that's now 2 weeks in a row that we've just heaped a lot of praise on Craig Mazin and HBO.
Yeah.
Great.
It's a very
that's just weird, that
fungy series. Fun.
Stop making fun. Don't make jokes.
I'll get my codes.
I've heard enough of them, and they're all terrible. You will get off. Just leave. But yes, as we've alluded to a little bit over the course of this episode, next week we will be discussing Spider-Man Across the Spider-Verse, which is funny considering we said we weren't going to talk about Marvel anymore. We'll make an exception to one of the most influential comic book films of the last couple of decades, to be honest. Dan's making stupid faces, but I already know it's not possible to dislike that film.
I'm not saying anything.
It's not possible. I'm not sure.
I might just be in the absolute minority. You never know.
Yeah, and if you don't like it, I'll be ending the video call immediately, and I'll just be doing it myself. But yes, we'll be talking about Across the Spider-Verse next week. So definitely stay tuned for that one. But until then, it's goodbye from Dan.
Farewell.
And it's goodbye from me. Goodbye.